OOCS into a Wider Galaxy, Part 346. Capes and Conundrums. There is a slight pause as she checks the readout again. A new ship is in orbit, and it arrived in the waning hours of the latest storm. It had been a bigger one, but the storm that kicked off when she was merely 20 years of age had been bigger and meaner. The inevitable? Dauntless class? Isn't Dauntless class a human design? She mutters before an input on the reading band around her head, and a reflexive wave of her wing causes the files to shift even more. She blinks at the images before her. Oh, right. He did mention something like this was happening sooner or later. It didn't show up for months, so I assumed it either happened when I wasn't looking or was canceled. I guess that was kind of dumb. A message pops up on her files and she accesses it to see that. A group of Yaoya are looking for a hunting license and a guide to 3 of the local serpents. And Harold Jameson? Probably a coincidence. There are only so many sounds and syllables before names run together. Besides, the name of that first human was Herbert Jameson. Then pops up the requests from a Xaden looking to be a huntsmistress. 2 Canadors on a date. She prefers a nice meal and cuddling on soft pillows, or maybe a swim in the oceans. But hey, different strokes for different folks, right? A bit more typing and the last of the upcoming week's tours are quickly filled in. All right, she just needs to send all this in, get it all approved, and inform the relevant parties that it's a go. She wonders for a moment why people bothered to hold off until after a storm to send in requests and messages. It's not like the storm could actually stop the communications through the Proton, and it's not like the power went down or the equipment was damaged. It was just loud outside, nothing more. Sure, they couldn't hunt during a storm, that was suicide, but waiting until after to make your reservations was just silly. Why wait? Still, time's up and things are out of her wings for now, so she stands and takes of the band before stretching her back and turning from side to side. She then takes 2 steps to the side. The door on her apartment/office opening and closing as she does so, and then jumps off the small balcony. The dry, hot air of Skathak fills her wings, and the natural lift of the unending thermals draws her upwards with a minimum of difficulty. She cuts it close to some newly made gargoyles, and small plumes of ash follow her upwards ever so slightly in her wake. The images of a bat projecting onto the cave roof and their paths illuminated by ash tell her where she can likely find her man. It's so funny where life can take you. She had been Miss Boring Wallflower and was now tied to Mr. Exotic Superman that numerous women took swings at on the daily. But her big guy was as loyal as he was solid, and she'd seen him walk clean through walls without phasing. There was a reason his outfit of the giant drug-pushing monster was just himself in a mask and a touch of Axiom. She lets the hot winds carry her along as she swoops through the softly swirling ash, and as she grabs onto the reinforced grip on the underside of a gargoyle and hangs as she looks at the test being taken. A mystery, which means she lets go and glides down next to the commissioner bot. Not a proper synth or even person. It was basically an evaluation system and a clue giver. Give him the right answer at the crime scene, and he tells you where to go next. Ah, bat, he begins to say, and she holds up her communicator. She has a technical pass. User identified Ambush Knight Bernal. Locate Santiago Bernal. She says and feels slightly giddy at being referred to as a Bernal. Uploading. The commissioner bot states, and she receives a text that gives her an address with a little wrestling mask symbol. He's on the job, but not too far away. Thank you. She says, it's a robot, yes, but there's no reason not to be polite. Then she takes off and flies through the air with ease. A couple local girls arrive at the mystery, and she hears the commissioner bot greet them and explain the situation as she soars around the nearest skyscraper. It takes her a couple minutes and a simple swoop to grip onto a steam pipe above the arena, and after just a moment, a pair of temporarily enlarged hands reach up and gently pluck her off the grip. She's righted and a mask is pulled off a handsome face, even as Santiago squats down so she can sit on his knee. Hello, little thing. Finished already? His tone is teasing and fond. The clear but measured accent makes her smile, even as she leans against his enormous torso. "Hello, big man, working already?" she asks right back. "Yes, I am, although this is the 5th stop in today's challenge, so I assume that we have some time together before anything," Santiago says before stopping and looking up. "Hello, sister," she calls upwards even as Dark Scream suddenly cuts off her dive by opening her wings and pumping extremely hard to stop herself from plowing right into the ground. "Hello, you two," Dark Scream says as she lands on her feet. Shadow Flight is a bit busy and sends her regrets. Step, step, jump, and she's on his back and he chuckles. Fair enough. "Hey, big guy. There's a ship in orbit that's apparently Dauntless class. Isn't that a human design?" "It is, and it is. It's the inevitable. Observer Wu was sent by the homeworld because the galaxy with Axiom and without Axiom is so different that it's blown people's minds back home. If Shadow Flight were here, she'd remind us that Null is Axiom, just in an unusable state." "Tomato, tomato," Santiago remarks and then clucks his tongue as the wings of Dark Scream start slowly caressing. No, I'm on duty, dear girl. We have to wait till later. This at least then," she says, climbing up and kissing him on the lips as he turns his head to face her. "Hey, no fair. I was here first," Ambush Knight says with a pout in her tone. "You snooze, you lose, sister," Dark Scream says as she drapes her wings over Santiago's shoulders and just rests there, even as Ambush Knight rises up to kiss Santiago and Dark Scream snickers. "Can you taste me there too?" "Hey now, none of that," Santiago says at a gentle rumble, and Dark Scream sighs as the sheer vibration of him speaking while she's draped over him like this is more soothing than any lullaby. Ambush Knight agrees with her on this and cuddles up to his chest from the other side. "You girls, are you not getting enough sleep? Hard to sleep when the world starts blowing up too early. You wouldn't get it. You got those tiny ears, you can't hear the high-pitched crackling that comes with eruptions. It sounds like someone's trying to strangle an earth Arumenta and a metal Arumenta with a rope made of their hair. Well, that's a mental image," Santiago remarks. "It's going to be a slow day. A lot of girls are sleeping in after last night's horrible sound. I got around it by bunking with a friend in orbit, but everyone else," Dark Scream says. "I used a silence ward around my room." Ambush Knight says, "Oh, I can't stand those. Isolating all the sound like that makes your own body stand out, and it's just gross." Dark Scream replies, "And I slept through the whole mess thanks to my tiny little ears." Santiago teases them gently. "This is different from what I'm used to," Velocity says as she tilts her head from side to side. She then leans back and the armor synchronizes but doesn't let her bend her neck backwards. "Less movement. The priority is protection," Harold says even as one of the technicians brings him the next piece he helps Velocity put on. "You won't be as fast or mobile, but it won't interfere with your stealth, and short of being hit with Starship-class weapons, you're borderline invulnerable to harm in that thing." Borderline? Vehicle-grade weapons can wear it down, but it'll take a long while to burn through. Just don't get into a shootout with a starfighter or gunboat. It won't end well, the technician says. Now, this armor is primarily thermal shielded, but it's also massively crush-resistant and heavily hardened against solid projectiles. While it will keep you alive if one of those giant snakes uses its sheer weight and height against you, you're not going to have a fun time. In order to keep it reliable and up the armor, we're leaving out some of the usual party favors. You're going to have to use non-integrated tools to compensate. So say I upset a lava serpent. What's my biggest risk? There are two, Herbert says from where he's sitting in Uma's lap. She's playing with his hair and is clearly treating him more like a dress-up doll than a brother-in-law. The more likely risk is that it slams you into a wall or slithers over you. Then in that case, you're going to be buried in half-melted stone. That'll be annoying, but not too dangerous. The real risk is less likely, but not impossible. And that is, Velocity presses, being eaten. The sheer pressure and heat inside the serpent are orders of magnitude greater than anything else. When that happens, you will need to activate emergency recall. Your suit will keep you alive for a bit, but it's nowhere near powerful enough to survive a full trip through the monster. Scathach lava serpents hunt several varieties of creatures that live inside the magma sea, and they have hides comparable to starship hulls. You won't have more than a minute." "And what if it happens to you then, Harold?" "Me? Well, I'm getting out as soon as possible." The sheer heat inside a serpent is enough to reduce most metals into a puddle, and the raw pressure is also high enough that even without the heat, it could mold and shred most metals. These monsters are world-ending threats vaguely shaped like an animal, and too stupid to be actively malicious, but are so dangerous they still need to be. Javra, if you vibrate any harder, you're going to drill a hole through the floor. "I can't! This is so awesome!" She blurts out so fast it's almost a single sound. Anyways, big dumb snakes are so dangerous they still need to be culled, so they don't spill over and kill everything again. They've already ended this world at least once since people began colonizing this place, and that wasn't very long ago. Herbert remarks. "Right, so back to topic. How does your armor feel? Are you ready to kill the end of the world in it?" Harold asks, and Velkoity turns her head from side to side, rolls her shoulders, plants her fists on her hips before turning around in a single movement, and then nods. The chrome and gunmetal gray armor shimmers beneath the light and looks strong. "I can move in this thing, so that'll have to be good enough," Velocity says. "It needs to be more than good enough. I need verbal or written confirmation that you feel properly protected within that armor. Otherwise, someone's going to have issue with things," Mr. White says, and Velocity pauses. "Well, I don't want to sound vain." "You want to paint it?" Agatha asks with a smile. "I want to paint it." "I've got you covered. We Crimson Hewers know all about style in our armor. And the style is blood," Herbert calls out cheerfully. "Exactly," Agatha says. "Now I've got a lot of reds, as you can imagine. But there are some blues, blacks, and greens in my collection. Can that stuff even survive the burning heart of a world?" No, it can. It would take extended time in a plasma bath to burn this paint off. You need a special axiom technique to apply and remove it," Agatha says. "So what are you thinking for that beauty? It's a chunky piece, but it's built to last." "Well, I actually do like my own scale color. Would it be possible to have some pink? Maybe as an accent," Agatha notes. "Maybe we should coordinate? After all, we're all getting armor." Harold says, and Agatha turns to him with a look of glee on her face. "Really? Extra armor?" "Of course, this is hunting armor, designed for Scathach lava serpents. Not to mention the boys here need some experience in making the good stuff," Harold says. "If you weren't correct, this would be an abuse of power," the technician says. "And the fact that the data is being brought back to Earth and is exactly the kind of things you're out here for? It's part of what makes you correct," the technician confirms. OOCS, Into a Wider Galaxy, Part 347. Capes and Conundrums. "This is weird. Weird but cool," Javra says as her wings flow through the metal and she can zip around even in the armor. "It was weird to make too. The fact that specific patterns on the armor can casually alter the abilities of metal and ceramics and make them permeable to only one thing is. Well, it's flying in the face of pretty much everything I learned when I was training," the technician says as he holds up a replacement piece or armor, and Javra takes a look at it and brings one of her wings around and tries to grab it. The clawed hand passes through it without any resistance at all. "Cool. And this was just in standard thermal armor patterns?" "Yeah. Open to look up and first part of a search to make thermal armor when we were in the general data network as Scathach. From what I can tell, programming-wise, is that the designs we're using are deliberately at the front of the search histories. Do you think it might be some kind of corporate nonsense? We tested things, immense pressure and heat, and things are fine. The links near the blueprints lead to health and safety boards and also to local armorers and mechanics to create them. I hope you're not implying that my armor specifications are simply out there," Velocity asks. "No? But the armor blueprints are completely modular and designed to link together with ease. So we just kept cutting and pasting until we had something that fit. Took some modifications. The neck links are repurposed from the armor used for Nagasha tails, just scaled appropriately," the technician says. "A guest?" Harold suddenly notes as he turns his head. A few moments later, he nods. Hafid, for some reason. Then moments later, the door opens and Hafid emerges with Terry in tow. Is there any way to learn that without getting into a drag-out fight with a literal goddess? Herbert asks in an amused tone. You were expecting me. Hafid notes. He saw you coming without warning a minute in advance. Javra notes. Hey, you're familiar with this world, right? What makes you think that? You're not the type to screw around if you have nothing to do. You're here, we're at Xueting, and therefore you want something from it, or are familiar with it, and have business already. I do. I'm using Terrence as a way to quickly arrive here and start speaking to a few people in person who have been giving me the runaround. I am one of several parties trying to restore the lost people of Xueting. Interestingly, they always seem to be busy whenever I call. So having a call and then literally walking into the office is the plan? I was going to simply walk in, but that may serve to make them more paranoid and attentive to my commands. Hafid remarks, commands? I am paying them to push through the legal niceties and clear the red tape in front of restoring the natives. Hafid states, didn't think that was your sort of thing. Uma says, and still on her lap. Herbert shakes his head. No, that lines up. His psyche profile notes that he considers the truly innocent to be protected and advocated for without hesitation or regret. And beings without higher intelligence or too young to make a choice out of malice are truly innocent. So a society taking its first stumbling steps fits more or less perfectly. Herbert explains, and Uma pats him on the head. Who is controlling the prosthetic? Hafid asks. Herbert, my brother, Harold states. Ah, the template. Understood. Hafid notes, and Harold's snort of amusement gets an exaggerated look of betrayal from Herbert. So are you using our ship as a stepping stone then? Are we going to see more traffic? Possibly. With woodwalking, a lot of people want to go through and see if they can't have fun here on Xueting. Oh shit, Harold says. How big is the line? Billions long. After generations of isolation, a lot of people want to see the galaxy. Terry says. You told me it was in the hundreds of millions. It was past the 900 million mark when I told you that. It hit the billions 5 minutes ago, Terry replies. Oh, we need to talk to the local governance and set up an embassy here on the world. Using this ship for a couple of people is one thing. Using this ship as a thoroughfare for any number above 100 is well and truly too much. The fact that we're past the 100 of million mark on the casual is a hard no, Harold states flat out. You won't let it happen? I will eject that part of the ship directly into a lava serpent's mouth if I have to fend off an ocean of tourists from it. That is not what it is there for in the slightest, Harold states. I'm talking to Admiral Hinala and sending some streams to speak to the local government, Herbert says in a reflexively formal tone. He's suddenly all business. I'll get moving myself. A prosthetic speaking from afar is one thing, but a person who's there in flesh and blood engenders a bit more respect, Harold says. Not without us, otherwise they'll just be trying to get into your pants the whole time. And God forbid some silly Sonier wear the wrong style of pants, Harold jokes. Wait, why wasn't there this issue on Albrith? It's no vacation world, but it's not a bad place to be. It did start like that, but there was news of what the Vasuti-smart creature was doing before it got too big. That scared pretty much everyone off. Fair. And of course, now that you've dealt with her like an absolute punk, a lot of them are kicking themselves for passing up the chance. Ha, Herbert chortles. I think there was a bit more of a challenge than what you're implying, Terrence, Hafid says in a mildly amused tone. It was an hour and a half before Shadowflight joined them, needing the extra time to sleep, and still a sleepy little bat as she curls up on Santiago's unoccupied knee and starts snoring. He gently strokes her head and her ears flick as he does so. It still amazes me that the woman can just conk herself out like that, Darkscream says. No kidding it. Ambush Knight begins to say before her communicator starts buzzing and Shadowflight flinches up. What? Santiago asks as Ambush Knight quickly moves to silence the machine that's shrieking in tones he cannot hear. That is the warning buzzer from my inbox. Literally thousands of people are lining up like crazy. The system has hit overflow, she says in mild awe. This is a population that rivals worlds, all clambering for and begging for tours and hunting trips and… What? We can't possibly accommodate all this. A fraction of these hunts would drive the damn snakes to extinction. What's going on? I have a suspicion. Let me ask, Santiago says as he slowly brings out his communicator and holds down a specific sequence. The phone switches to give him a direct line. This is Santiago Bernal, code Sloughing Stone Snakes. Confirm code. Code confirmed. His communicator chimes. There is a sudden rush towards Scathach. A planetary-scale population is attempting to book vacations at the same time as the inevitable is in orbit. Do I need to be concerned? Negative. There is no military threat, and you can allow the standard actions to proceed. Is there anything I need to know? The broad details is that the inevitable is the primary contact point for a large and isolated community to the galaxy at large now. They desire to explore, but do not have sufficient ships or a culture of leaving and returning. Coupled with the Astral Forest events, they see this as a chance for vacation and are all jumping on it simultaneously. This is not a hostile act, but it is an ill-thought-out one. Copy that. Bernal, out, he says before pocketing the communicator as it automatically shuts down the app. So, it's an honest vacation rush. It just came from a weird place. Isn't the Astral Forest technically one of the vacationers? Shadowflight asks blearily. Still clearly out of it, but that doesn't stop her from being sharp. Technically, although I think I should put you in the nearby staff room. Get some sleep. Want to be with you. You can use my jacket as a cuddle toy, but you need sleep. He says gently as he grabs onto her and slowly stands up. Ambush Knight and Darkscream hold on as he rises to full size, carefully navigates into an employee-only area and holds up Shadowflight until her feet grab onto a grip in the ceiling. All break rooms on Scathach need at least 2 sets of ergonomic grips for Sinir to hang from. He then quickly opens his locker and pulls out his jacket. Shadowflight reaches out for it and cuddles deep as she starts to nod off almost right away. The kiss on the nose seals it for her, and she lets out a contented sigh. Moments later, the Sonir woman is snoring softly and fully. How much you want to bet she didn't even try sleeping while the eruption was happening? Used it as a time to watch movies or play games? No dice, Santiago says, knowing for a fact she had done exactly that. He'd been with her for part of it and advised her to try and sleep, but she said it was pointless and was now paying the price. Hey, big guy, Darkscream says and nods towards an indicator on the wall. There were people at the 4th stage, which meant they could pass at any moment and reach the boss battle that was the Bane fight. Really more of a puzzle. They had to sneak around him, offer distractions, and activate some bombs to drop him into another floor he was too hyped up on venom to properly escape from. The disadvantages of being in the midst of a roid rage are many. Right, time to put on the face again, he says, pulling the mask out of his pocket. You'd rather be El Rhino? They could not dream to match the magnificence of El Reno. You know the Quendarat would be really amused by this. Ambush Knight notes, Quendarat? It took me a bit, but I found a species that evolved from rhino-like beasts, reclusive and just barely in distant space. Their homeworld is in the Meccan Reach. So, does this mean that El Rhino is El Racist? Darkscream teases. Considering that my gimmick is that being rhino-like makes me unstoppable and noble, I don't think anyone reasonable would be insulted. Santiago says, besides, they dare not take El Reno's sacred ivory from him. He then puts on the mask and his body language shifts as Darkscream and Ambush Knight slink off him. He rolls his shoulders and the axiom swells as his muscles start bulging in uncomfortable-looking ways. Now, I will break the bat. Puts chills down my spine when he does that. Shadowflight mutters in a groggy tone as Santiago leaves the room as Bane. He leans back in with a clear distortion on his mask to show that his eyebrow is way up. Muscles make sounds that wake me. Oh, sorry, Santiago mutters before he goes back into position and character. There's a moment before all 3 girls let out a shared giggle at how someone so physically powerful can be like that. "Batman, come face me! I will fold you like paper!" Santiago, fully in the Bane character, hollers out so loud that all three girls actually feel it a little, and they share another laugh. She looks up from her files as a strange sound starts ringing out. It's low-pitched but persistent, like an object striking another repeatedly. She shrugs and goes back to work. It's likely a janitor. But then the sound continues, and continues, and continues. After 10 minutes, she puts her computer on sleep mode through her neural link and then walks on all fours as many other fruit-soner do to the door of her office. "Jacolia, I think that. Who are you?" She starts to reprimand the Jorgwa janitor before realizing that she in fact has two Trets, one a teen, a Sonier, and a synth in her office, and her secretary is now bearing her face in her wings. The small synth has a device that consists of a wooden paddle with an elastic tether keeping a rubber ball attached to it. He's hitting the ball with the paddle incessantly. "Told you," the synth says, and the blood soner takes a deep breath and gives a reproving look to the child. "What?" "Just because it worked does not mean it wasn't irritating," he states plainly. "Where can I get one of those?" The shorter and thinner Tret asks the synth and is handed the device. "Thanks." They pound fists. What is going on? She demands if she finally finds her voice. OOCS, Into a Wider Galaxy, Part 348, Capes and Conundrums. "Well, we wanted your attention. Your secretary claimed there was no time, so we decided to wait, patiently." The Tret adult states, and she blinks at that. The synth outright snorts. Why would a synth snort? They don't even breathe. Then it finally clicks, and she recognizes the Sonier. Then sees beyond them to notice that there is a large group of heavily armed women behind them. "Why didn't security confiscate your weapons?" she demands. "They legally can't," Hafid says as he steps forwards. "Now, Miss Siani, I believe we are overdue on a talk for what exactly your company has been doing with my money and why the natives have yet to take a single breath of Scathach air." Yes, sir. By the way, were they ever named?" the little synth asks, and that breaks the tension admirably. "They were so young as a people, about to get the same treatment my own did. Then the world reduced them to ash and memories. They didn't have time to create a language, or even be named by an outside party. They were a surprise to all of us, one torn away in tragedy mere moments later." Hafid explains, and Siani outright flinches at the sheer pain in the man's tone. He was speaking about creatures that had been extinct longer than he had been alive, but from the tone, you would swear he was speaking about his own child. "And what exactly is keeping them from just being cloned again?" "I looked them up. There are stable DNA patterns," the younger Tret asks. "Red tape. The world is too dangerous to allow anyone not in a shielded city, starship, or with access to thermal-shielded armor onto it, which means a primitive people that were barely into stone tools is a no-go." The older Tret replies before shrugging. "No, he can't be a Tret. Too solid, too confident." But Axiom is pouring off him like a fountain of power, all customized and erupting from his face. She can still see his eyes when she blinks. He can't be human either. He has to be something else, something dangerous. She doesn't feel half this on edge when hunting the serpents with minimal equipment. And Hafid. "I am sexually aroused by hunting poachers like animals." Wayne is not helping. Her vitals are spiking. An unseen presence asks, and she lets out a cry, and it's right there. A slight gap in the echolocation. Not a solid object, just a small place of audible silence in the noise of the world. "Lady, ma'am, calm down," the other being begins to say, stepping forward. His features now jumping out to show a nearly flawlessly symmetrical face with a strong jaw, and the blank eyes are nearly glittering at her. His voice is sending confusing rumbles through her even as he approaches. "We're not here to hurt you. We just need some questions answered. Despite the fact that many of us have weapons, it's cultural wear. Giria back there is a devastation. The incubation pod for her egg had a defensive laser turret on it. Agatha is a crimson hewer. Anything less than full mechanized armor is outright indecent. I can go on, but we're not armed because we want to hurt anyone. We're armed because we're naked without weapons, okay? Was that supposed to help? In the manner that you can be reassured that we're not here to hurt you. We have no intention of causing you any harm, the man says. Now you're familiar with Mr. Wayne. Meet his nephew, Little Wayne. The synth snort has a reverberation this time. Also known as Terrence or Terry. I am Harold Jameson, my brother. Herbert Jameson is piloting the prosthetic. In the back are my wives who have decided to try and be less intimidating for a time. The lovely Nagasha present is my Giria. The four-eyed beauty tinkering with the explosive is Dumaya. The adorable one is the Matak Javra. Delectably graceful there is Uma of the Takra Takra. The shapely gap in your echolocation is Velocity, and the extra cuddly Canador is Agatha. Extra cuddly? Agatha asks in amusement. Am I wrong? He asks. I was hoping for a bit more. I didn't want to repeat compliments, even though it's an also is sort of situation. All is? So you think we're lovey beauties that are adorable, delectably graceful, shapely, and extra cuddly? A voice echoes from above somewhat, but seems to have no location. Am I wrong? He asks again. Is now really the time to flirt with your wives? Hafid asks. Yes, Harold and Herbert say in perfect synchronicity. It's always time to flirt with the wives. You asked, Terry notes. That I did, Hafid says tightly as the brothers snicker. Siani blinks and tries to reorient herself by glancing to her secretary, and the woman just shrugs. Fine, you've got enough weapons to go on a hunt but aren't here to hurt me. What do you want? I want to know the recent obstacles to reviving the natives. I have poured considerable resources into your firm to see this happen, but you have not reported anything in some time. So I am here in person to see things through. And you didn't think to schedule an appointment. Your secretary panicked and told me you were unavailable for a month. This is a dedicated workday, and if you take much longer, she's going to be late for her next appointment. Did I call it? Is the summary of the red tape being that the world is too dangerous for a primitive people to survive upon? Yes. And I looked up getting a possible permit to have an area cordoned off with protective shields for the resurrection, or if they could be recreated upon another, more stable world. But every patch of green on the world is a protected area, and introducing foreign life forms to it is highly illegal, and they would be categorized as an invasive species on any other world, and it would be considered an act of ecological sabotage to deliberately introduce them there. Wait, are these things people or animals? Terry asks. Both, usually whichever one gets in the way more. I'm sorry I haven't been keeping you up to date, Hafid, but I've flown clean into a window with this. I don't know if I can make any more progress on this front. Very well then. I assumed there would be some difficulties, and have been speaking to like-minded individuals. We do have another possible answer, a backup. And that would be? Refocus your aims to both registering cloning equipment and the legal filings I need to have a hydroponic station produced in orbit. If I cannot revive them upon their own home, then I will do so in an imitation of it. These people will return, but it will be in a safe, controlled environment that is entirely unnatural and therefore not subject to environmental protection laws. Then they will return to build their homes and stories and name themselves while standing upon the ash-fed grasses of their homelands. Very poetic, Mr. Wayne, but even if I can get you the permits for all this without any real expense, and I can, this is the kind of endeavor that will take literally generations to bear fruit and cost an enormous sum with minimal payout as well. As an accountant and contract lawyer, I cannot in good faith recommend this course of action. The only way to make money off of this that I can divine is to tax the species as it emerges, and even then, it will take you centuries to even scratch at the sheer cost of this all. I understand the expenses. I will see to those. Just get me the documentation I need to begin. I and my allies have several ideas. Allies? Harold asks. Your great-grandmother-in-law, for one. Hafid states. Does she still qualify for that? She adopted one of our siblings, so. There is no word in Galactic Basic for someone that is simultaneously your great-grandmother-in-law and your brother's foster mother. Herbert notes. I've checked. If you two could please focus or cease your interruptions, Hafid asks tartly. Sorry. The two very different voices chime out in perfect synchronicity. Then fight back smiles. Unsuccessfully. Time is up, Batman! You have lost! Santiago screams out while still in his persona, and then there is a pause. No, seriously, the game has a time limit in this stage. You didn't even get a quarter of the way through the puzzle. Puzzle, the young Sonir demands. Didn't you even read the clues? Santiago asks as he pulls the mask off. Bane is not supposed to be fought directly in this stage. You're supposed to find a way to weaken him, and only then do you go for the fight. But even then, only from ambush. But I can take you! No, you really can't. I stayed in character and pretended that your hits were painful. Sorry, kid, Santiago says gently. But, kid, this is a brain teaser, not a brawling competition. I was the big stupid obstacle in your way for you to outsmart. Not the giant pinata for you to smack with a stick until prizes come out. Santiago says gently, but, young one, you're barely past my knee standing upright. Short of having a cannon or being a very skilled axiom fighter, I'm not something you can defeat, even if I was in the haze of drugs that made me unable to think properly. Santiago explains to the little girl. But in the show, a little boy was able to send Bane back flying, she protests. Even the weakest Robins are tough, fast and skilled little buggers. And while you're certainly quick and tough, you need a lot of practice if you want the last piece of that puzzle. Also, I'm stronger and more solid than Bane. Santiago says before giving her a pat on the head. So if you want to try again, please do so in a little bit. The next person is already waiting. Okay, the little Sonir says, flapping up and out of the way to hang from a rafter with comfortable grips for her to watch as Santiago puts his mask back on Change's stance, and then, Batman, face me! I will fold you like paper! So for the record, your name and rank, please. Robin White, Sergeant and Attorney at Law. Primarily contract and the occasional touch of general practice. My days are very varied in the day-to-day. Some days I'm performing as a soldier, other days I'm basically just a lawyer and going over some legal details. And finally, there's the local bit of silliness that I get caught up in. Yes, the local silliness. What's that about? Essentially, the Sonir are in desperate search for an identity. And this is a Sonir world. So when the Dauntless was hacked to the high heavens, the whole galaxy got a good look at all our media. And the Bat people saw a bat-themed superhero and decided they really liked that. So when one of our soldiers, one Herbert Jameson, found himself here and found reams of cosplayers LARPing like they're in the comic books, he saw opportunity. For the sake of clarity, please define the words cosplayers and LARPing. Cosplay and cosplayers are those who dress up like characters from media. It's wearing a costume, but taken more seriously and with more care than going to a store to buy a cheap outfit. LARPing is often hand in hand with cosplay, but you're acting out the character you're dressed as. So there's business in playing pretend? Observer Wu asks. There is, and a great deal of it. We actually bring in a fair amount of money from this. Furthermore, the local community is grateful for us, and we can recruit from promising players of the games. How are these things legal? They're registered as festivals. Couple that with the fact we have a difficulty system that has numerous legal forms to keep everything good and legal, and we can keep these plates spinning. Mr. White says as he pulls out a folder and slides it over to Observer Wu. The contracts are digital normally, but I think you'd appreciate having a physical copy as well. The data chit taped on is a digital copy of it all. I see, this will be most useful. Tell me, how do you take part in these contests? Most of the time I take part as an antagonist. Sometimes with a false sniper rifle, sometimes as a combatant. And do you find people who are effective at things through these games? Often enough. The thing about Xueting is that it has insanely dangerous predators, but they're being protected from overhunting. So when the hunters arrive, they occasionally have to wait a while, and these people are the energetic, must always be busy types. So they look for more to do, follow the strange beams of light illuminating the ash and find our contests. If they impress us, then we send them a job offer. And we've had a fair amount of high-quality recruits from this. You'd think that a person that's skilled would already have some kind of job or passion that wouldn't coincide with military life. Usually, but the ones we're getting are usually the men from families with a hunting culture. They're often protected and will only be allowed to watch the big hunt for the big monster. But a public game even children can do? That's fine. Oh? A job offer as a result of doing well in the game? That doesn't sound bad now, doesn't it? Robin asks, and Observer Wu nods. A way to get around. A way to escape. It is a known phenomenon in the galaxy that men will start to act out if they live long enough. Sometimes it's minor, sometimes it's extreme, but it has a shockingly high level of criminal bent. We give them another legal option. It's where a lot of our recruits come from, but not all of them can make it to us. This is sort of a backdoor program where they can slip out of the gently suffocating grip of their families. And how do the families react afterwards? It varies. The most dramatic involved a few individuals outright attacking undaunted soldiers over what's happened. But that was a very quick lesson in the fact that undaunted are always armed and rarely, if ever, alone. And let me guess, the ones that are alone are the ones to be afraid of. Something like that. OOCS, Into a Wider Galaxy, Part 349, Capes and Conundrums. So I've got a question, Terry asks as they leave the law offices of Siani and Sisters. Speak, Hafid states. How many races have gone extinct on this world? Technically, 1. Technically? You have probably noticed that the Sunir have 2 different entries in the Galactic Index, despite being a singular species with 2 distinct branches, Hafid states. Is it like that? Yes. There are roughly 4 known variants of the extinct natives of Xueting, differentiated by their pelt colors. The last one alive was of the mottled green and brown variant, but we had those with shimmering silver and black, bright green and yellow, and dark red and black as well. Effectively, the species had several sister species, as often occurs in other races. They were soon to begin merging and mingling with each other. Then they were lost. Oh, like humans and the other Homo sapiens. Many are extinct, but you can find their traits in modern man. Harold clarifies. Exactly. The Sonir were actually on the track to do something similar, but first contact occurred. So, that potential was stopped. We didn't need to all breed into one side or the other, as some great cataclysm reshaped our societies. Do you regret that? Harold asks. Why would such a thing be regrettable? Hafid asks. Think about it. If the 2 main Sonir branches were able to fully merge, you'd likely be an omnivore instead. I don't think I would be altogether too different. I doubt an increased dietary palate would change me overly. Hafid notes. In fact, I think I would have preferred being some form of omnivore or a proper fruit Sonir. I do not like the idea of something dying for my meal. Thank goodness for bioprinting then, Herbert says. Indeed. Also, nutrition supplements, Hafid adds. By the way, how are things going on the Dauntless? Harold asks. With the nerds? I've had their coffee machines confiscated until they calm the hell down. Thankfully, they're terrible at lying and have yet to send a negotiator with anything resembling a poker face. What? Terry asks. You do know that there are comics, cartoons, and more based off of something that looks a lot like your family, right? Herbert asks. Yeah. It was surreal watching those episodes. I had to remind myself that I don't have any Slobe enemies. Terry says, well, they're popular. Popular enough that since they know you're real and in a place renaming itself Gotham, they're going rabid, Harold says. Not quite. They're not at the foaming at the mouth stage, but they've been unilaterally denied vacation to Xueting, so you guys get left alone while you're here. If they want to talk to you and your family, they can make a formal request and not stalk like absolute maniacs. Oh God, I've got fans? It's likely worse than that, Terrence. Remember, there was a glut of human media not long ago. You missed it, but there are a great many fans, as this city can attest, Hafid says, gesturing to the Gothic architecture all around them. Huh. So what happens if I put on that suit I made? Well, you kinda copied what your suit is in the cartoon by instinct, Harold says. I know, Matt laughed for minutes straight at it. I'm not sure 73 seconds is minutes, Terrence, Hafid notes. Well, either way, Terry says, putting his hands in his pockets and looking around. He sees a beam of light reaching into the sky to end with the symbol of a bat painted into the roof of the cave. Are those up for fun? The test's passed. You're allowed to do everything but the hardest ones, Harold says as he checks his communicator, which means that if you show up at the last one today, you'll be playing on super easy mode. Super easy mode? The so-called super villain will have nothing in the way of peripheral vision and nearly as much ability to hear, so sneaking around him is easy. Sneaking? Batman is a stealthy and clever character. Of course, sneaking is involved somewhere, Herbert says. Can we take part? Javra asks. Oh, by the way, how big were these natives? My size? Agatha's size? Somewhere in between? Isn't nearly everything in between your size and Agatha's? Terry asks. Actually, a little smaller than yourself, Miss Metak. Physically as a species, they are incredibly thermally resistant. But with an onrush of the lava serpents, everything was burnt away. It was smoke inhalation that wiped out the vast majority. Being directly crushed killed the rest. But they were thermal immune? Agatha asks. Yes, in truth it was like seeing canidors in miniature, but with more rounded muzzles and prehensile tails to aid climbing. The silver and red variants had digging claws and less powerful tails to tunnel through igneous stone and ash to hunt for food and build their homes. The yellow variants were more ambush hunter than trap layer and would leap out of the yellow flowers they hunted near to use their stronger than normal tails to strangle their prey as they prevented them from clawing them off with their own claws. Finally, the brown variants would do the same by leaping off the trunks of trees. So they were carnivores? Omnivores, actually. When the hunters dragged back their prey, the rest of the tribe would quickly gather nearby plant bulbs, vines, and lichen to cook it all together on the hot stones next to the geysers or lava vents. The more advanced tribes were learning to stretch these rations further by brewing them into stews in gigantic pots made out of concave stones. They were just learning to make those pots by infusing axium into their claws and tearing out the unneeded stone from the pot. Hafid explains in lecture mode. They were also showing variance in preferred foods from tribe to tribe and… Hafid takes a breath and calms down. And none of it is important right now. We need to get things underway to bring them back, Hafid says. Which is part of what makes this so difficult. It's hard to replicate an oasis in an active volcanic region, especially on a spaceship. Still, that's a lot to consider, Harold notes. I've actually dug into this information a bit, but didn't get that much. Where did all this info come from? Herbert asks. I've been digging for a very long time. Not to mention a great deal of information is on the local networks, to say nothing of what my allies have been sharing with me, including a member of your family. I suppose I should have asked her first about them, but it seems… I don't know, she seemed really shaken by it. It seems rude to poke that sore spot, Herbert says. Yeah, not something to bring up during an otherwise happy reunion. Speaking of reunions, how's our little brother doing with her? Herbert asks. She's got a magic touch with children. You know that as well as I, Herbert. The little guy is already as attached to her as if she was his mother in blood. Good to hear. The continuum must grow. We are not some hive mind collection of monsters, Herbert. Private Stream is, Harold chides him. Right, sorry, it can be so hard to pull myself away from the… many. Herbert's voice sounds out from every remotely shadowed area. He gets a light chop on the top of the head in response. And how'd he do that? Terry asks. He hacked nearby speakers. Turn it off. Do you want to get in trouble? Harold asks. Really? I'm getting a lecture on behavior? No, a warning that we don't control the area and can't fully bullshit our way out of getting in trouble here. This isn't Centris where everything is expected to be hacked and compromised. I know I have a license for street performance, and guess what? That counts, technically. When did you get that? 2 hours ago, Herbert says smugly and gets another chop in the head for it. You know I physically cannot feel that. It's cathartic, Harold says. So we doing one or not? Our hunt's not for a day, so I'd say so. Besides, I want to see how you handle the boss. Who's the boss today? You know that cool guy you met? Him. You know that doesn't narrow it down, right? Terry asks. Hey, thanks, kid. I walked into that. You did? Want to blow it off by playing at being a hero? Harold asks. Yes, I do. I'm going with. If we're not hunting till tomorrow, then I need something more to do, Ch.Ch.346 says. The commissioner bot has a mug of coffee that it's pretending to sip from as it stands watch over the crime scene. Ah, Batman, the night is already starting. Terry says nothing as he looks around. Nothing to say today? Focused. Terry says, and the robot accepts the answer and goes back into a neutral mode. It's already done, it's greeting and follow-up. The crime scene involves a pair of mannequins with a hollow projector on them to make them look like people. There is a highlight to the area around the corpses and another one surrounding simulated impact marks on the wall. But in truth, Terry can see the fact that there's a second wall raised out to avoid property damaged. These men were thrown hard enough to crush their insides. The damage got them both in the heart. The impact was as precise as it was brutal, the commissioner bot says as it follows his gaze. Any puncture wounds? Bullets? Knives? No matching wounds, just sheer blunt force trauma. The bot supplies. Did they work together anywhere? Ch.Ch.346 asks from nearby as she does her best Sonir impression and hangs like a bat. But unlike the Sonir, needs to use her shape-shifting wings to make up for the lack of gripping feet. Yes, they worked at... The commissioner bot starts to answer as it produces a card with an address on it and Ch.Ch.346 takes it. Thank you. Come on, kiddo, we're off. But I'm not done yet, Terry complains. And Ch.Ch.346 pauses. Fine, we can wait, Ch.Ch.346 says. Oh, be nice. It's his first time, Harold remarks. It's her first time too, Terry notes, and she's as seasoned mercenary and monster hunter. She's long learned to live her life on the edge of awareness, Harold says. She's already fought and killed things on the scale of lava serpents. Like what? Hafid asks. Grand gliders, territorial, prey-stealing jerks that are horrible-smelling and utterly inedible. They suck, Ch.Ch.346 says. They called me the glider gutter because I would always go off and take down any gliders in a hunting area. What are they? Hafid presses. Big moth thing with the whole Earthani tongue weapon, but so big that the mouth spear can legit go through one of these buildings. Granted, it would probably burn up and die if it even got close to these local snakes, but is more than big enough to bring all the snakes running, slithering, and dumb enough to try, especially if they spotted one sleeping. There must have been some irony felt when it was upon a world with that creature that the primal Earthani emerged. Not really. We've had Earthani tribes before, and that one was well known to us. He paid us good in weapons to hunt and supply the Greenstone Alliance with food to fight down a famine. The stupid Erumenta of the Broken Empire were in a civil war, and they both dammed a major river that fed the Goldlands, their biggest trading partner of food. They tried to starve each other out at the same time. It was like one person with split personalities that hated each other. Dumb, 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 and dumb. And the primal Earthani was helping Greenstone? Yeah, but only after he took over the part of the empire they broke away from. It was him negotiating for a cease of hostilities. He also unblocked the river, paid the Goldlands well, but their harvest was already screwed over big time by the forced drought. There wasn't enough for both halves of the empire. And that's where you and yours came in. Damn straight! I'm surprised at your candor with all this. I researched Lacron 297, and I was under the impression there was a significant impairment on the population, especially mentally. Hafid notes. The less civilized groups avoided a lot of that. If someone was too dumb to be a member of the mountain clan, then she didn't make it long enough to make more mountain clan. And since we had a strict tradition of going out to be awesome before having kids, it kept us all pretty sharp. Ch.Ch.346 says with a grin. My own tribe did something similar, mostly in that if someone was too stupid to learn from the fights they got into, it usually ended up killing them. Dumaya adds. Survival of the fittest, Ch.Ch.346 adds. Not what most people think when such a topic is brought up. Hafid remarks. But I can't say I disapprove. Stupidity should hurt. But if there's no choice in that stupidity, is that a fair thing? Harold asks. That's always the debate, isn't it? Hafid remarks. But if someone should know better, or their caretakers should, then I cannot find much sympathy for them. Well, not for the negligent caretakers. The child I have a great deal of sympathy for. If they survive, I bring in protective services. How often? I ended up with a bounty on my head for it. Multiple times. Dude, Terry says, considering that the women in question are now behind bars as serial abusers, I feel no shame. Not all parents deserve children, but all children deserve parents. OOCS, Into a Wider Galaxy, Part 350. Capes and Conundrums. This is just more absurd the more I look into it, Herbert says randomly, and Harold shrugs, as everyone not trying to figure out the chemical formula turns to him. They were at the second part of the puzzle now, and were trying to understand exactly what kind of chemical was being introduced. There was a note in all parts of the contest that read, "These are not actual chemical combinations. This is a pattern recognition puzzle. Ingesting or injecting any of these chemicals in any combination is extremely dangerous, if not lethal. The samples here are not actual chemical samples. They are water with food-safe dyes in them. Do not do this in real life without an expert's express assistance." After a few moments, Harold starts giving everyone an odd look. Is no one going to ask him what he's talking about? Honestly, we were waiting to see if your little two-man comedy routine would continue. So we're all just waiting for cues for the other side to set up. Got it. And what is so? Harold begins to ask, but Herbert is already laughing. It's the laws that made bringing back the natives such a pain. It's a long, silly, and stupid thread of regulations that all started from good intentions and ended up as a big paralyzing knot that stops anything from being done. Herbert says, the laws that look at the natives like people says putting them into their natural habitats is either child abuse, a death sentence, or otherwise. The ways to get around that require them to be tested and proven to be thermal immune. Attempting to clone a person requires a legal naming and registration, at which point the fact that first contact hadn't been made yet gets in the way. It is highly illegal to clone someone for testing reasons alone. Hello, Harold says at that. I know, but you're a loophole. They never intended you to wake up. Herbert remarks, I know. Anyways, I've got a file in my actual hands that's as thick as my leg and printed in bullet point summaries for why these natives haven't been allowed to be recreated. All of it, from what I can see, was born of good intentions, and all of it fell so hard on its face that the laws became the problem. If these Rugalchans were a bit better worded or had any wiggle room for exceptional cases like this one, and the natives would not only be back already, but would have been back a long time ago, Herbert says. Then he holds his hands up as if trying to hold an object. The bot is mimicking my movement right now. I'm physically holding the file. It's in bullet point, and it's the kind of thing you'd expect in a pedantic drug dealer's records. And why did you use that example? I am legally obligated to say no comment, Herbert states, which means that in his attempt to understand the raging madness that is Centris, he stumbled on a drug den, and the prosecutions are moving forward. But until some arbitrary time in the future, he can't talk about it, or the suspect might walk. You'd be shocked how many of those I have, Herbert remarks. Infinite? Is the number infinite? Harold asks. You have my memories, that's cheating, Herbert says. If you're not cheating, you're not trying. No, in this case, you're both cheating and not trying. Knock it off. Knock what off? I don't know, Herbert says, and they both dissolved into laughter. What was that? Hafid demands. The dumbest possible argument we could have? Herbert asks around a few giggles. Anyways, it looks like Terry is wrapping up comparing the color of the chemicals and its readout to the files. What does the actual compound create? Hafid asks. Nothing. The compound is chemically inert in an actual laboratory setting. It's even non-toxic, but far from pleasant to eat. Also, the whole thing has warnings plastered every second paragraph to not actually mix these things and that the chemicals here are just colored water. Is this you being cautious, or is this you making up for the fact someone was very, very foolish? This is us anticipating that no matter how foolproof you make something, the galaxy will forever supply a greater fool, Herbert remarks. If only we could find the source and plug it, then we'd all be better off. Harold remarks, if only. Hafid notes as he watches Terrence finish the puzzle and receive the next destination for the game to continue at. I have some concerns about these games. Oh? Simply put, while I do appreciate you not teaching him how to create some massively addicting steroid, teaching him to make garbage in a chemistry lab is less than ideal. True enough, but the chemical mixes we use for puzzles like this are invariably non-reactive and safe to be around. Anyone with an actual interest in chemistry will see right away that it's just a bunch of worthless nonsense. But anyone trying to divine something dangerous out of this will come up against a dead end. Besides, the research and double-checking of things is the skill being taught here. This is about attention to detail and verifying. Important investigative qualities, Harold explains. Presumably, Hafid notes. You don't approve? I'm not sure that he's being challenged at his level. Hafid notes. Of course not. This is a public game. It's as non-personal as it gets. Someone picking up a random stone and hurling it at you is more personal, Harold says, and Hafid turns to watch Herbert slowly put down a rock. So why are you two acting like this? We're brothers. In every way imaginable, we're brothers. So we're entertaining each other, Harold says, and Hafid nods. A very different relationship with my own siblings. Well, you all focus on different things and disagree as to what is of greater importance. Of course, your relationship is different from our own. Not to mention there's no telling how things are going to work with the rest of the Jameson line. I've been mass cloned. There's all but guaranteed to be a criminal in the mix somewhere. Really? If you count out the clones, then the Jamesons are of near equal size to the human species. Non-cloned humans are heavily outnumbered by the clones, Herbert states, and Hafid pauses. Considers and takes a step away and turns so they're both in front of him. Explain, now. Some samples of human genomes were taken. These samples were made into clones. It happened a lot. And I do mean a lot. My own DNA was not the only one. Engineer Reginald Pike, Horace Blue, the captain of the Lacran Titan squads, and more. Herbert says, it's going to be a hell of a thing when humanity reaches the galaxy at large. They're going to find that they're already here genetically, but without any of the context to the cultures they're supposedly a part of. Demelo, Harold says, there's been some talk about deliberately releasing other genomes. Reginald and myself are of European ancestry, but Horace is a Caribbean man who traces his ancestry to both the natives there and back to Africa. Herbert says, I think the term is Taino. But you're right. There may be a call to try and get others out. It should appease the troublemakers back on Earth if we do so. Harold considers. Speaking of, there has been long debate into the community as to how. Hafid begins to explain before Terry finally finishes everything and motions for them to follow him. The next test is several blocks away, and it's a stealth challenge. Terry and Javra need to sneak around several guards with glowing green venom packs and sabotage the process. Introduce some chemicals to render the drug harmless. Remember, study their pattern, watch and see where they go and how long they stay there. Terry nods at Harold's advice and takes a perch above them all to watch as clearly as he can. Javra reveals a new trick. She reveals that she can somehow shift her wings' coloration, and Harold just stares as she uses this to walk through the contest and finish up effectively ignoring the guard bots. Since when could? It's a child's trick that's considered not worth the time as an adult. After all, a dark wing is a beautiful wing. Ch.Ch.346 answers, honestly, I feel really silly for doing it that way. Like a little girl again trying to learn how to read and write and using my wings as the canvas. If the point you were making was that a child could do this, then congratulations. You've done it, Hafid states. More that the tests can't consider everything, Ch.Ch.346 says as Terry sends out small pellets of astral forest matter to mark the areas where he has to go through and then waits for one of the guards to leave the area. He ends up there and inserts the false chemicals, then is gone long before the guards return. It's finished in moments. Man, sorcery made that easy. Terry notes, can you do it without it? Ch.Ch.346 challenges, probably not. I'm new at this. Have more faith in yourself, Terrence. A touch of patience and caution could have won you the day. Hafid says, and Terry considers, then turns around and goes back in to do it again. Hafid smiles at that. No, really, an armored Batman would have every reason to bring an electric cannon to a fight. It's just common sense going up against an even more superpowered Bane. The woman argues, be that as it may, it was still well and truly beyond the limits of this test for you to shoot that thing at me. I don't care what setting it has. If I can fit my fist in the barrel, then I don't consider it to have a non-lethal option. Santiago counters, especially when I'm this size. I wouldn't consider this a non-lethal weapon to a small starship. Oh, come on, you took it. Because I have an Axiom brand that targets electricity as a danger vector. Santiago counters, ma'am, you need to either start again without the lightning cannon, or you're failing this section. But I'm supposed to fight you. No one's dumb enough to get close to someone as big as you are. Who said you had to fight fair? Santiago asks. So I can use the cannon? No, you don't need it, he answers. Then how do I fight someone like you? Use your brains. My character is lacking them at the moment, so you have a huge advantage. You're weaker than a lava serpent, but you're here to hunt them anyways. Santiago advises before a few more people enter the waiting area. And make your decision soon, there is now a line. He slips the mask back on, and then watches her for his cue. I'll go first then, Ch.Ch.346 says gleefully. Wait, what? The woman with the cannon asks, and Ch.Ch.346 flits into the arena. Batman, I will break you this day. I will crush you into a sphere and give your corpse to the children for a football. Bane hollers out as he points dramatically to the Mitak. Then charges. She dissolves to the side and he slams into the wall hard enough to shake the building. Oh, scary man. Now I know I could take you. But why don't we make this embarrassing? Ch.Ch.346 taunts as she begins searching the room and finds the 4 placed valves and giggles to herself. Her wings are powerful, and it takes her no effort at all to turn each one. There is a rumbling in the center of the arena, and Bane comes out searching for the bat. Then it collapses underneath him. There is the sound of a crunch far below, and Bane bellows in fury. Batman, even with one arm I will break you! Bane hollers out, and Ch.Ch.346 stands at the edge. Is that a challenge? She asks, and there is a roar before a poorly aimed chunk of rubble is tossed at her, and misses entirely. That was a yes! She dives in after him with a cackle. There is the sound of roaring, grunts of pain, numerous bits of breaking masonry, and then a victory cheer. Okay, you won. You won. Hey, no taking the mask. Santiago protests, and a giggling Ch.Ch.346 comes rushing out to the hole with a slimmed-down Santiago after her. He pounces, and she flits away, but he suddenly warps and changes his direction entirely to grab his mask, and she starts trying to flap away with it, but nowhere near hard enough to damage the mask or be anything other than annoying. The large Mexican man raises an eyebrow at her in amusement and slowly pulls the mask back. She lets go and is sent flying conveniently towards Harold, who catches her with ease. Okay, look. The character of Bane is no true luchador. He just wears the mask of one. But it is well and truly the wrong thing to do to try and take a lucha's mask. This one I don't care for. But if you ever see me in a glorious white mask with a beautiful horn, then do not even try. for El Reno tolerates no disrespect.